The emergency klaxons hadn't sounded in the Galactic Council chambers for 300 years. The last time was when the Krovax accidentally invented a bomb that could destabilize space-time itself. They'd been politely asked to stop doing science unsupervised. This time, the threat was apparently worse. Ambassador Klepto of the Avarian Collective stood at the central podium, his feathers literally ruffled with anxiety. For a species that evolved from prehistoric terror birds, watching Avarian look terrified was deeply unsettling to everyone present. His talons clicked nervously against the holographic interface as he pulled up the first image. "Esteemed council members," Klepto began, his voice cracking slightly through the universal translator. "What you are about to see represents a clear and present danger to galactic civilization as we know it." The image flickered to life. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several representatives reached for their personal defense fields. It was a creature. A massive beast with fur the color of dried blood, eyes that reflected light like a nocturnal predator, and a mouth full of teeth designed for one purpose, and one purpose only: ripping flesh from bone. "This," Klepto announced, with the gravitas of someone revealing a doomsday weapon, "is what the humans call a Death World apex predator. They have somehow managed to domesticate it." Counselor Threads, a peaceful crystalline being from the Harmonious Collective, made a sound like wind chimes having a panic attack. "Domesticate? As in, keep it close to their living quarters? On purpose?" "I'm afraid so," Klepto continued, advancing to the next slide. This one showed the creature's skeletal structure, helpfully labeled with what someone had clearly thought were the important bits. Note the jaw strength capable of exerting over 300 pounds of pressure per square inch. Observe the pack-hunting intelligence. These creatures are descended from an ancient Earth predator called the wolf, which hunted megafauna across Ice Age tundra. A junior representative from the cautious delegation raised a tentacle. "Surely the humans keep these contained. In maximum security enclosures, behind force fields and armed guards?" Klepto's laugh was the sound of someone whose sanity had left the building and wasn't planning to return. "I wish I could tell you that, I truly do. But according to our intelligence, humans allow these creatures to sleep in their beds. They permit them near their young. They take them to public spaces for recreation." He pulled up video footage that had been acquired at great expense from Earth's public networks. The council watched in mounting horror as one of these beasts charged full speed across an open field. A human stood in its path, apparently frozen in fear, holding some kind of spherical object. The creature's muscles bunched, it leaped, its jaws opened wide. The human laughed and said something the translator rendered as, "Good catch, buddy," while the beast dropped the sphere at their feet, tail wagging, clearly preparing for another attack run. "Great galaxies," someone whispered. "It's training them. Teaching them to retrieve weapons." Klepto nodded grimly. "It gets worse. Humans have created entire institutions dedicated to these creatures. They compete with them in organized events. They've established breeding programs spanning thousands of years. And perhaps most disturbing of all," he paused for dramatic effect, "they've created multiple varieties, different sizes, different capabilities, different specializations. It's a biological arsenal disguised as companionship." The council chamber erupted into panicked chatter. Defense protocols were suggested. Trade embargoes were proposed. One representative suggested simply avoiding Earth's entire sector of space and pretending humans didn't exist, which honestly wasn't the worst idea anyone had ever had. That's when the doors to the council chamber opened, and Captain Riley Davis of the Earth Diplomatic Corps walked in with her emotional support, Tibetan Mastiff, Mr. Waffles, who had absolutely no idea he was about to cause an interstellar incident. He was just happy to be there. Captain Riley Davis was having a fantastic day right up until she walked into what appeared to be a full-scale evacuation. She'd been looking forward to this diplomatic meeting for weeks. First human to address the Galactic Council directly. Historic moment. Career-defining opportunity. She'd even gotten Mr. Waffles professionally groomed for the occasion, complete with a little bow tie attached to his service vest that read, "Emotional Support Animal," in 3 languages, including Galactic Standard. What she hadn't expected was for half the council members to immediately scramble for the exits, while the other half activated personal shield generators that she was pretty sure violated at least 4 treaties about weapons in diplomatic spaces. Davis said, stopping in the doorway. "Is this a bad time?" Ambassador Klepto, who had gone remarkably pale for someone covered in feathers, pointed a shaking talon at Mr. Waffles. "You brought one of them here? To the council chambers? Have you lost your mind?" Davis looked down at Mr. Waffles, who looked back up at her with the serene expression of a dog who had never had a single thought in his entire life. His tail wagged slowly. A small strand of drool escaped from his jowls. "You mean my dog?" Davis asked, genuinely confused. "Yeah, he's my service animal. It's all in the paperwork I submitted. Mr. Waffles is certified for emotional support during high-stress situations." "Service animal," Klepto repeated, his voice climbing an octave. "You've militarized them." "What?" "No, he's a dog. He keeps me calm." Davis reached down to pat Mr. Waffles' head, and approximately 15 council members flinched in unison. "Look, I don't know what you've heard about dogs, but they're completely harmless." "Our intelligence suggests otherwise," Councillor Threads chimed in, their crystalline body refracting light in what was probably their species' version of nervous sweating. "We've seen the data on their predatory capabilities." Davis blinked, then blinked again. "Predatory capabilities? We're talking about the same species here, right? The ones that get excited about car rides and eat grass when their stomachs hurt?" The universal translator made a sound like it was struggling with the concepts car rides and grass eating. It settled on translating the phrases as high-speed vehicle training exercises and tactical vegetation consumption, which did not help the situation at all. "I have 3 of these at home," Davis continued, trying a different approach. 3 Tibetan Mastiffs, plus 2 smaller dogs. A beagle and a corgi. They mostly sleep and beg for treats. The translator rendered treats as performance enhancement rations. Klepto made a sound like a tea kettle achieving sentience. "You keep 5 of them? In your dwelling? Voluntarily?" "Well, yeah. They're pets. Companions. We've had dogs for like 15,000 years. They're basically part of human culture at this point." Davis was starting to wonder if this was some kind of elaborate prank. "Seriously, what exactly do you think dogs are?" "Apex predators from a death world," Thread said matter-of-factly. "Pack hunters with crushing jaw strength and predatory instincts honed over millions of years of evolution." "Okay, yes, technically true, but you're missing some important context here," Davis said. "They're also good boys. Very good boys. The best boys." The translator gave up entirely on good boys and just displayed a series of question marks. Mr. Waffles, blissfully unaware of the diplomatic crisis occurring around him, yawned. It was a big yawn, the kind that showed off every single one of his impressive teeth and made his jowls flap in a way that Davis personally found adorable. The cautious delegation's representative actually screamed. "He's just tired," Davis said desperately. "It's been a long trip. Look, why don't I just demonstrate how harmless he is?" "Demonstrate?" Klepto's eyes went wide. "You're going to activate its combat protocols? Here? Now? What? No. I'm going to show you some basic commands. Sit. Stay. Shake. Normal dog stuff." She turned to Mr. Waffles and held up one hand. "Sit." Mr. Waffles sat immediately, his massive haunches hitting the floor with a solid thump. His tongue lolled out happily. The council members who were still present exchanged horrified looks. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. "Instant obedience. Military precision." "Stay," Davis commanded. And Mr. Waffles stayed, his eyes locked on her with the devoted attention of a dog who knew that commands were often followed by snacks. "Total battlefield discipline," another voice murmured. Davis held out her hand. "Shake." Mr. Waffles lifted one enormous paw and placed it gently in her palm. "Advanced human-creature coordination protocols," Klepto said faintly. "They've achieved perfect tactical synchronization." "You've got to be kidding me," Davis muttered. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Mr. Waffles' favorite tennis ball. "Okay, fine. Watch this." She held up the ball. Mr. Waffles' entire body went rigid with excitement. His tail began wagging so hard it created a small breeze. "Fetch," Davis said, and threw the ball across the chamber. What happened next would later be described in official council records as the Stampede Incident. Mr. Waffles took off like a furry missile, his paws thundering against the polished floor, his ears flapping, his expression one of pure unbridled joy. The remaining council members scattered, like someone had just announced the building was on fire. Klepto flew straight up to the ceiling. Threads apparently had a previously unknown teleportation ability that they activated immediately. Mr. Waffles reached the ball, scooped it up in his mouth, and trotted back to Davis with the proud bearing of a dog who had just accomplished the greatest feat in canine history. He dropped the ball at her feet, slobber and all, and looked up at her with an expression that clearly said, "Again, again, do it again." From somewhere near the ceiling, Klepto's voice drifted down. It retrieves projectiles. Of course it does. Why wouldn't the Death World Predator retrieve projectiles? Davis was starting to develop a headache. Then a small voice piped up from behind an overturned podium. Excuse me, but may I touch it? A small aquatic alien in a mobility suit peeked out. Their name badge identified them as Junior Counselor Pip from the Tidal Worlds. You want to pet my dog? Davis asked, hope rising in her chest. If the Death Beast permits it, Pip said nervously. He absolutely permits it. He loves pets. Mr. Waffles, gentle. Pip approached slowly, extending one trembling manipulator appendage. They touched the top of Mr. Waffles' head. Then their entire body seemed to relax. Oh, Pip said softly. Oh, it's so soft. Why is the war machine so soft? And that's when Davis realized she might actually have a chance at fixing this absurd situation, assuming the council didn't have a collective heart attack first. Davis watched as Junior Counselor Pip experienced what every human knew as the universal truth. Dogs are soft, and petting them releases endorphins that make everything better. This is extraordinary, Pip murmured, running their appendage along Mr. Waffles' back. The texture is unlike anything in our biological databases, and the creature is warm. Why is it so warm? Mammals, Davis explained, feeling like maybe, just maybe, she was getting somewhere. We regulate our own body temperature. Dogs are mammals, like humans. We actually evolved alongside each other. From his position near the ceiling, Klepto made a strangled noise. You evolved with said back in time. Them? Deliberately? Well, not deliberately at first. It just sort of happened. Wolves started hanging around human camps because we had food scraps. The friendlier ones got more food. Eventually, they became dogs. Symbiotic relationship. We helped each other survive. Weaponized co-evolution, someone muttered. Davis pinched the bridge of her nose. Okay, clearly the translator is not doing me any favors here. Let me try to demonstrate just how non-threatening dogs are. Mr. Waffles down. Mr. Waffles dropped into a lying position. His massive body sprawled across the floor like a very furry rug. Now, roll over. Mr. Waffles rolled onto his back, exposing his belly, tongue hanging out of his mouth at a ridiculous angle, back legs splayed in opposite directions. He looked about as threatening as a throw pillow. The council chamber went silent. Is it? Threads ventured carefully. Is it dead? What? No. He's showing his belly. It's a vulnerability display. It means he trusts you and wants belly rubs. Belly rubs. Klepto repeated slowly. Yeah. You pet his stomach. It makes him happy. Look. Davis knelt down and rubbed Mr. Waffles' belly. His back leg started kicking involuntarily in that way that dog legs do. His eyes closed in bliss. You've deactivated it, Klepto said with dawning horror. That's the shutdown protocol. You have a code phrase that renders the creature completely helpless. It's not a shutdown protocol. It's just... You know what, never mind. Davis stood up, brushing dog hair off her uniform. New approach. Mr. Waffles, speak. Mr. Waffles barked once, a deep, booming sound that echoed through the chamber. Half the council members who had been cautiously returning to their seats immediately scrambled back to their defensive positions. Attack call, someone yelled. It's summoning the pack. It's a bark, just a bark. He does it when he's excited or wants attention or sees a squirrel or literally anything happens. Davis was really regretting not bringing a human-only delegation now. Look, I'm going to throw the ball again. Just watch him. Really watch him. She held up the tennis ball. Mr. Waffles immediately scrambled to his feet, his entire rear end wiggling with anticipation. His eyes locked onto the ball with laser focus. Davis threw it toward the far end of the chamber. What the council saw. A massive predator launching itself forward with terrifying speed, muscles rippling beneath its coat, paws striking the ground with thunderous force, capable of running down prey across vast distances. What was actually happening? A very good boy was getting a toy, and this was literally the best moment of his entire life. Even better than that time last week when this exact same thing happened, and he could not contain his pure, unbridled joy. Mr. Waffles reached the ball, grabbed it in his mouth with surprising gentleness, and galloped back to Davis. His tail was wagging so hard his entire back half was swinging side to side. He dropped the ball at her feet and immediately went into a play bow, front legs stretched forward, butt in the air, tail still wagging like a furry metronome set to maximum speed. Again? Davis asked. Mr. Waffles let out an excited whine that sounded like a rusty gate, mixed with pure happiness. She threw the ball again. And again. And again. By the fifth throw, some of the council members were starting to look less terrified and more confused. It keeps retrieving the projectile, Counselor Threads observed. But it never uses it as a weapon. Because it's not a weapon, Davis said, slightly out of breath from all the throwing. It's a toy. A game. Dogs like games. They like playing fetch and tug-of-war and chase and pretty much anything that involves running around and having fun. Pip, who had been gradually getting braver, actually giggled as Mr. Waffles zoomed past on his latest retrieval mission. It's kind of delightful, actually. Look at how its facial appendages flap when it runs. Those are called ears, Davis said, smiling despite herself. And yes, they're ridiculous. Everything about dogs is kind of ridiculous, honestly. That's part of why we love them. Love, Klepto said, finally descending from the ceiling. You use that word a lot regarding these creatures, because we do love them. They're family members. Humans have this whole thing where we pack bond with basically anything that'll tolerate us. Dogs figured that out about 15,000 years ago and have been exploiting it ever since. Mr. Waffles returned with the ball, but this time, he didn't drop it. He held it in his mouth and looked up at Davis with bright, mischievous eyes. Drop it, Davis commanded. Mr. Waffles did not drop it. Drop the ball, Mr. Waffles. He playbowed again, clearly trying to initiate a game of keep-away. I swear to God, if you don't drop that ball right now, no treats for the rest of the day. Mr. Waffles immediately dropped the ball. The power of the word treats was universal and absolute. See? Davis said to the council. They're smart, but they're not military weapons. They're just animals that like food and play and affection, pretty much like every other social species in the galaxy. But surely, another council member ventured, surely you don't actually compete with them. The reports mentioned organized competitions. Davis lit up. Oh, you mean dog shows? Yeah, those are great. Here, let me pull up some footage. This'll clear everything up. She accessed her personal datapad and projected a video file onto the main screen. This, as it turned out, was a catastrophically bad idea. The council watched in mounting horror as a professional dog show announcer's voice filled the chamber. And here we have Champion Bloodline's Midnight Destroyer, sired by Grand Champion Ripper's legacy, out of International Champion Silver Fang's dynasty. Note the powerful hindquarters, the strong jaw structure, and the alert, intelligent expression. This breeding program has been refined over 6 generations to produce the perfect specimen. On screen, a perfectly groomed German Shepherd trotted around a show ring with the poise of a supermodel. Klepto's feathers stood completely on end. Did they just say breeding program? 6 generations? Perfect specimen? Oh no, Davis said quietly, realizing her mistake, but it was too late. The video continued, showing breed after breed, each accompanied by commentary that, when filtered through an alien perspective, sounded less like a dog show and more like humanity unveiling its arsenal of biological weapons. Tiny chihuahuas, miniaturized for infiltration and reconnaissance. Greyhounds, purpose-bred pursuit predators capable of speeds exceeding 40 miles per hour. Border collies, exceptional intelligence and tactical coordination capabilities. And then, catastrophically, the poodle grooming segment began. The council watched in absolute silence as a standard poodle was transformed through careful grooming into something that looked like a topiary gone sentient. Pom-poms of fur were sculpted with precision. The groomer wielded scissors with the skill of a surgeon. What? Counselor Threads whispered. What are they doing to it? That's just grooming, Davis said weakly. Aesthetic grooming. For competition. It's not. It doesn't mean anything. They're modifying them, Klepto said, his voice hollow. Psychological conditioning through forced aesthetic alterations. Testing their obedience. Their tolerance for human handling. It's a haircut, Davis protested. The video showed the final reveal. The poodle, perfectly coiffed, prancing around the show ring with obvious pride while the announcer discussed the precision and skill required to achieve such a cut. Voluntary participation in conditioning protocols, someone murmured. They've achieved total psychological dominance. Davis closed her eyes and counted to 10. Then, to 20. Then, she just gave up and accepted that this diplomatic mission was now a complete disaster. That's when Mr. Waffles, sensing his human's distress in the way that dogs always somehow do, walked over and put his enormous head in her lap. He looked up at her with those big, soulful eyes that said, "I don't know what's wrong, but I'm here and I love you." And Davis, despite everything, felt a little bit better, which is when Pip spoke up, their voice thoughtful. "Ambassador Klepto, with respect, if these creatures were truly weapons, would they provide comfort? Would they seek to soothe their humans' distress?" The council chamber fell quiet. "I've been observing," Pip continued, growing bolder. "And I don't see a weapon. I see a companion. A friend. Perhaps the humans are telling the truth." Davis looked at Pip with the gratitude of someone who'd just been thrown a life preserver in the middle of the ocean. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That's exactly right. They're friends. That's all they've ever been." Klepto landed on the floor, his feathers slowly smoothing back down. "Then, explain this, Captain Davis. If they're merely companions, why do you refer to them as having been bred for thousands of years? Why the specialized varieties? Why the shows and competitions?" Davis took a deep breath. "Because humans like to make everything into a hobby that gets wildly out of hand. We saw wolves and thought, what if they were friends? And then some people thought, what if they were really good at herding sheep? And other people thought, what if they were really small and could fit in a purse? And it just spiraled from there. We didn't weaponize them. We just got really enthusiastic about dog breeding the way we get enthusiastic about literally everything. Uncontrolled enthusiasm as a species trait." Klepto muttered, "That tracks, actually." "Look," Davis said, standing up. Mr. Waffles stayed close by her side, his tail wagging gently. "I know Earth seems like a scary place to you. It kind of is. Everything there evolved to survive in a high-gravity, high-oxygen environment with extreme weather variations. But that same environment taught us the value of cooperation, of companionship, of having someone watch your back. Dogs understood that. We understood that. And we became better together." She reached down and scratched behind Mr. Waffles' ears. He leaned into her hand, groaning with contentment. "This isn't a weapon," Davis said firmly. "This is a friend who's been by humanity's side since before we built cities. Who's pulled our sleds and herded our animals and warned us of danger and kept us warm on cold nights and made us laugh when we were sad. Dogs aren't humanity's weapons. They're humanity's heart." The council chamber was absolutely silent. Then Pip started to applaud, their manipulator appendages clicking together in what Davis hoped was the aquatic equivalent of enthusiastic support. Slowly, a few other council members joined in. Klepto sighed, a long-suffering sound that suggested he'd aged several years in the past hour. "Very well, Captain Davis. Perhaps we were hasty in our assessment. Perhaps these creatures are not the threat we believe them to be." Davis felt relief flood through her. "Thank you, Ambassador. I promise dogs are. However," Klepto continued, and Davis's relief evaporated, "we will need to review all Earth fauna before we can establish full diplomatic relations. Simply as a precaution. I trust you understand." "Of course," Davis said. Because what else could she say? "Excellent. Then we'll schedule a follow-up session for next month. You can bring documentation on other Earth species you've domesticated. I'm sure it's a very short list." Davis thought about cats, and horses, and hamsters and guinea pigs and rabbits and ferrets and the guy down her street who kept a rescue raccoon named Bandit. "Sure," she said weakly. "Very short list." Mr. Waffles wagged his tail, blissfully unaware that he'd just become the galaxy's most controversial diplomatic incident. Davis should have left well enough alone. She really should have. The council was calming down. Pip was scheduling playdates with Mr. Waffles. Klepto had stopped looking like he was going to have a cardiac event. This was as close to a diplomatic victory as she was going to get. But Captain Riley Davis had never been good at quitting while she was ahead. "You know what?" she said, pulling her datapad back out. "I think the problem is that you saw the championship-level stuff, the serious competitions. Let me show you a regular, casual dog show. The kind that happens every weekend in thousands of cities across Earth. This'll give you a better sense of what dog culture is actually like." She pulled up a video file from the Westminster Dog Show, which she personally considered one of the more wholesome examples of human-dog bonding. The council leaned in, willing to give this another chance. The video opened with a professional announcer's voice, warm and enthusiastic. "Welcome back to Westminster, where we're about to see the herding group take the ring. These remarkable animals represent thousands of years of careful selective breeding, each bloodline meticulously maintained to preserve essential working characteristics." Klepto's eye twitched. The camera panned across the lineup. Australian shepherds with coats and merle patterns that looked like someone had spilled paint on them. Border collies, with eyes that seemed to stare into your soul. German shepherds standing at attention like soldiers. Old English sheepdogs that appeared to be 70% fur and 30% mystery. Note the Australian Shepherd's remarkable agility and intelligence, the announcer continued. Originally developed to work livestock in the American West, these dogs are capable of independent decision-making and can work for hours without tiring. Many handlers report that their Australian Shepherds seem to anticipate commands before they're given. Precognitive abilities. Someone in the council whispered. They've bred precognition into them. That's not. Davis started, but the video kept rolling. And here we have the Belgian Malinois, a breed favored by military and police forces worldwide for their unwavering focus, fearless temperament, and exceptional trainability. The camera showed a Malinois that looked like it was carved from muscle and determination, standing perfectly still beside its handler. Military forces. Counselor Threads repeated. They just said military forces. For police work, Davis said quickly, like detection and search and rescue, not combat. But the translator had rendered police work as enforcement operations, and she could see she was losing ground rapidly. The video moved on to the toy group, which Davis had desperately hoped would help her case. Surely tiny dogs couldn't be threatening. The Chihuahua, the announcer said cheerfully, may be the smallest breed recognized by the American Kennel Club. But don't let their size fool you. These mighty little dogs have personalities far exceeding their physical stature. Chihuahuas are known for being fearless, often challenging dogs many times their size. On screen, a Chihuahua that weighed maybe 4 pounds was yapping aggressively at a German Shepherd, completely undeterred by the size difference. Miniaturized berserkers, Klepto said faintly. No sense of self-preservation, willing to attack any target regardless of tactical disadvantage. They're not berserkers, they're just... Davis struggled for words. They're just Chihuahuas. They've got short dog syndrome, little dog complex, they don't know they're small. Psychological conditioning to ignore physical limitations, someone translated helpfully. Davis was beginning to understand how wars started over translation errors. The video continued its tour through various breeds. Each one, seen through the council's terrified lens, sounded worse than the last. Dachshunds. Bred specifically to hunt badgers in underground tunnels. Translation. Subterranean assault specialists willing to engage hostiles in confined spaces. Greyhounds. Capable of reaching speeds of up to 45 miles per hour, making them one of the fastest land animals on Earth. Translation. High-speed pursuit units with acceleration capabilities exceeding most ground vehicles. Bloodhounds. Possessing up to 300 million scent receptors, a bloodhound can follow a trail that's over 12 days old. Translation. Advanced tracking capabilities that exceed standard sensor arrays. No target can evade detection. Rottweilers. Historically used to drive cattle to market and pull carts for butchers. Translation. Heavy assault class with load-bearing capacity and livestock intimidation protocols. Okay, stop, Davis said, pausing the video. I can see how this is sounding, but you have to understand the context. Yes, different breeds were developed for different purposes. That's how selective breeding works. But the purposes were things like herding sheep and retrieving ducks and keeping people company, not warfare. You specifically mentioned butchers, Klepto pointed out, because they pulled carts, with meat in them, from the butcher shop. Armed. Escort for supply lines, the translator offered. Davis made a sound that might have been a scream if she'd been less professional. Pip raised an appendage tentatively. Captain Davis, perhaps you could show us the judging criteria? That might help clarify the purpose of these competitions. Good idea, Pip. Great idea. Davis pulled up the official breed standards documentation. C. Judges evaluate dogs based on how well they conform to the ideal standard for their breed. Things like structure, movement, temperament. She displayed the German Shepherd breed standard, which included helpful diagrams and detailed descriptions. The German Shepherd should be well balanced, with harmonious development of the forequarter and hindquarter, she read aloud. Strong, agile, substantial, and muscular. The impression is one of depth and solidity without bulkiness. The council stared at the anatomical diagrams showing optimal muscle structure, bone density, and physical proportions. That's a technical specification, Thread said slowly. You have technical specifications for optimal combat effectiveness. For showing. For looking pretty in a ring. The teeth should be strongly developed and healthy, with a scissor bite. Davis continued reading, immediately realizing her mistake. The lips should be firmly fitted and dark. Jaw structure specifications. Klepto muttered, making notes. Davis scrolled down desperately, looking for something, anything that would sound less militaristic. She found the temperament section. The German Shepherd dog should be poised, but when the occasion demands, eager and alert, ready to serve in any capacity, she read. Oh, come on, that one's not even bad. Ready to serve in any capacity, several council members repeated in unison. Davis gave up and showed them a video of a poodle prancing around a show ring, perfectly groomed, moving with the grace of a dancer. Surely this would help. The poodle is an active, elegant, intelligent dog, the announcer explained, squarely built and well-proportioned. Originally bred as a water retrieval dog, the poodle's distinctive clip was actually designed to allow freedom of movement while protecting vital organs in cold water. The aesthetic modifications serve a tactical purpose, someone said with dawning horror. Protected vital organs, another added. Water operations. A third contributed. The video showed different sizes of poodles, standard, miniature, and toy. All identical in proportion, just scaled differently. They come in multiple payload sizes, Klepto observed, his voice completely flat now. They're just different sizes, Davis shouted, her professional composure finally cracking. Some people have big houses and want big dogs. Some people have apartments and want small dogs. That's it. That's the whole reason. Housing logistics. She pulled up another video, this time of the agility competitions. Dogs of all breeds running through obstacle courses, jumping through hoops, weaving through poles, climbing over A-frames. This is a sport, Davis explained. Exercise. Fun for the dogs and their handlers. Watch how much the dogs are enjoying themselves. The council watched border collies fly through courses at speeds that seemed to defy physics. They watched handlers direct their dogs with subtle hand signals and voice commands. They watched dogs that made a mistake on a course look genuinely disappointed in themselves. Infiltration training, Klepto said numbly. Obstacle negotiation protocols, Threads added. Silent communication systems. A third voice chimed in. Psychological investment in successful mission completion, someone else contributed. Davis put her head in her hands. You people are killing me, actually killing me. I can feel my blood pressure rising. Mr. Waffles, sensing distress, put his head on her knee again. His tail wagged slowly, sympathetically. Pip swam closer in their mobility suit. Captain Davis, I think I'm beginning to understand something. These competitions, the breeding programs, the training, all of it seems to bring humans joy, yes? Yes, Davis said gratefully. Exactly, joy. Fun. Bonding with our dogs. But the way you describe it, Pip continued thoughtfully, with such precision and specificity, such dedication to perfection, it mirrors how other species might discuss military development. Because humans are insane, Davis said bluntly. We take hobbies and turn them into obsessions. Someone thought, wouldn't it be fun to see whose dog is the prettiest, and then we created an entire international organization with standardized rules and breed specifications and championship titles. That's just what we do. We did the same thing with flowers. And vegetables. There's a competitive pumpkin growing circuit where people spend thousands of dollars trying to grow the biggest pumpkin. We're not militaristic. We're just competitive about literally everything. You have competitive agriculture? Klepto asked. Multiple types. Biggest pumpkin, best tomato, prettiest rose, most unusual vegetable shape. There's a whole thing where people find vegetables that look like famous people or objects and enter them in competitions. The council digested this information. So when you selectively bred dogs for thousands of years, Threads said slowly, it wasn't to create weapons. It was because you thought it would be fun? And useful, Davis amended. Like, herding dogs actually help with herding. Hunting dogs help with hunting. But yeah, a lot of it is just because we could. Because we wanted to see what would happen. Because someone said, I bet I could make a really tiny dog. And someone else said, oh yeah, watch this, and then Chihuahuas happened. Unregulated genetic experimentation driven by competitive social dynamics. Klepto translated. Davis paused. I mean, when you say it like that it sounds bad. But yes. Technically. She pulled up one more video. This, one from a local dog show in a small town. The production quality was terrible. The ring was set up in a high school gymnasium. The dogs were clearly beloved family pets, not professional show dogs. A golden retriever got distracted mid-show and wandered off to sniff the judge's pocket where she'd stashed treats. A basset hound lay down in the middle of the ring and refused to move. A Dalmatian got the zoomies and did 3 laps around the ring at full speed before its handler could catch it. The crowd cheered for every single one of them. This, Davis said firmly, is what dog shows actually are. They're community events. They're excuses for people who love their dogs to get together and celebrate them. Yes, there are professional levels with serious competition. But at the heart of it all, it's just people who think their dogs are great and want to share that with other people. The Dalmatian finally tired itself out and trotted back to its handler, tongue lolling, tail wagging. The handler laughed, bent down, and kissed the top of its head. The dog's whole face scrunched up in joy. "See?" Davis said quietly. "That's not a weapon. That's not a tool. That's family." The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Councillor Threads spoke, their voice thoughtful. "Captain Davis, I think perhaps we owe you an apology. We saw danger where there was only love. We saw weapons where there were only companions." "You really did," Davis agreed. "Though in our defense," Klepto added, "you people did breed these creatures to have very specific and sometimes alarming capabilities." "Sure, but we also bred pugs, which can barely breathe and are basically genetic disasters that we keep alive through sheer force of affection. We're not exactly criminal masterminds here." "You bred creatures with compromised respiratory systems?" Threads asked, concerned. "For aesthetic reasons," Davis confirmed. "Because we thought flat faces were cute. Look, I'm not saying human judgment is always great. I'm just saying our motivation is usually, wouldn't that be neat? Rather than, wouldn't that be militarily advantageous?" Mr. Waffles chose that moment to notice his own tail, which he apparently found deeply suspicious. He began turning in circles, trying to catch it, his massive body spinning like a furry top. "Your elite trained security animal is attacking itself," Klepto observed. "He does that sometimes," Davis said. "Nobody knows why. It's one of life's great mysteries." Mr. Waffles finally caught his tail, looked surprised by this development, and then let it go and wandered over to investigate an interesting smell near one of the council seats. Pip made a sound that their translator rendered as delighted laughter. "I think I'm beginning to like dogs, Captain Davis. They're wonderfully absurd." "That's the best description I've ever heard," Davis said, grinning. "Wonderfully absurd. That's exactly what they are." Klepto sighed deeply. "Very well. I move that we accept dogs as legitimate companion animals rather than biological weapons. All in favor?" The council voted. It was unanimous, though Davis suspected some of them were still not entirely convinced. "Excellent," Klepto said. "Then we can move forward with establishing full diplomatic protocols with Earth. I'm sure the rest of your domesticated species will be much less controversial." Davis thought about cats. She thought about how she was going to have to explain cats. She looked at Mr. Waffles, who was now attempting to befriend Councillor Threads by shoving his nose against their crystalline body structure, his tail wagging so hard it was a blur. "Yeah," Davis said weakly, "much less controversial. Definitely." She was absolutely doomed. Davis was about to launch into a carefully prepared speech about Earth's other domesticated species when the fire alarm went off. Not the gentle, orderly evacuation alarm that one might expect from the galaxy's most advanced diplomatic facility. No, this was the something has gone catastrophically wrong alarm, complete with flashing lights and a sound that could wake the dead. Turns out, when you press every panic button in a council chamber simultaneously during a perceived crisis, the electrical system gets a bit overworked. Smoke began curling out from one of the wall panels. Not a lot of smoke. Just enough to suggest that somewhere behind that panel, circuits were having a very bad day. The council immediately did what any rational group of sentient beings would do when faced with fire. They panicked harder. Klepto took flight, shrieking something about fire suppression protocols. Threads began making a high-pitched keening noise. Various council members scrambled for exits that had automatically locked due to safety protocols, which just made everyone panic more. Davis reached for her communicator to call for help, but Mr. Waffles beat her to it, sort of. The massive dog walked calmly through the chaos, weaving between scrambling aliens like he was on a leisurely afternoon stroll. He reached Davis, looked up at her face, then at the smoking panel, then back at her face. His expression was the canine equivalent of, well, this seems suboptimal. Then he sat down right next to her and leaned his entire body weight against her legs. Davis, who had been tensing up to spring into action, felt the warm, solid pressure of her dog against her. She took a breath, then another one. "Okay," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Everyone calm down. It's a small electrical fire. The suppression systems will handle it." Nobody was listening. Except Pip. The little aquatic alien had been watching Mr. Waffles. They'd noticed how the dog hadn't run, hadn't panicked, had simply gone to his human and stayed calm. And if a creature from a death world wasn't worried, maybe there wasn't actually anything to worry about. Pip swam over to Davis and Mr. Waffles, positioning themselves near the smoking panel. Captain Davis is correct. The fire is contained. The suppression systems are activating. Sure enough, a soft hiss indicated the automatic extinguishers were deploying behind the panel. The smoke stopped almost immediately. Davis gave Pip a grateful nod. Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Waffles wagged his tail once, then did his concerned dog lean again, pressing harder against Davis's legs. She reached down and scratched behind his ears. Good boy, she murmured. Very good boy. Klepto landed shakily, his feathers settling back into place. The creature didn't react to the threat. Because it wasn't much of a threat, Davis said. Mr. Waffles has excellent instincts. If there was real danger, trust me, he'd let me know. Dogs are actually great at sensing when humans need to be worried versus when they need to be calm. She looked around at the council members, many of whom were still visibly shaken. Look, I know you've spent this whole meeting terrified of dogs, but here's the thing you need to understand. Dogs didn't become humanity's companions because they're fierce or dangerous or militarily useful. They became our companions because they're loyal, because they stay calm when we need them to, because they comfort us when we're scared. Mr. Waffles, as if to illustrate the point, let out a huge yawn and then sat down properly, his tail sweeping the floor in slow, peaceful arcs. 15,000 years ago, Davis continued, some wolves decided humans were worth hanging around, and humans decided those wolves were worth feeding. And we've been together ever since. Through ice ages and plagues and wars and famines. Dogs pulled our sleds across frozen tundra. They warned us when danger was coming. They kept our children warm at night. They sat with us when we were lonely. She knelt down next to Mr. Waffles, wrapping an arm around his massive neck. They're not weapons. They're not tools. They're not even really pets, honestly. They're partners. Friends. Family. Pip swam forward, their manipulator tentatively reaching out to touch Mr. Waffles' head again. I think I understand now, Captain Davis. It's not that dogs are harmless. It's that they choose to be gentle. That's much more impressive than simple harmlessness. Exactly, Davis said, surprised by how insightful that was. Dogs could be dangerous if they wanted to, but they don't want to. They want to be with us. They want to make us happy. That's what thousands of years of evolution alongside humans created. Not a weapon. A friend. Klepto approached slowly, his talons clicking against the floor. May I? He asked, gesturing toward Mr. Waffles. Of course. The ambassador extended one wing tentatively. Mr. Waffles sniffed it politely, then gave it a gentle lick. Klepto made a sound that might have been laughter. It's grooming me. An apex predator is engaging in social bonding behavior. That's what dogs do, Davis said, smiling. They make friends. It's literally their favorite thing. Other council members began cautiously approaching. Threads carefully touched Mr. Waffles' fur again, marveling at the texture. A delegation from the Silicon Collective extended sensor arrays, fascinated by his body heat. Even the cautious delegation's representative managed to work up the courage for a tentative pat on the head. Mr. Waffles accepted all of it, with the patient dignity of a dog who had no idea he was making galactic history. His tail never stopped wagging. You know what the scariest thing about humans actually is? Davis said suddenly. It's not our death world. It's not our physical capabilities. It's not even our weird tendency to pack bond with anything that has a face. What is it then? Klepto asked. It's that we look at something wild and dangerous, something that could absolutely hurt us, and our first instinct is to ask, but what if we were friends though? We did it with wolves. We did it with cats. We did it with horses and hawks and, honestly, give humans long enough and we'll try to befriend everything in the universe. She stood up, brushing dog hair off her uniform. That's what you should actually be worried about. Not our weapons or our technology or our combat capabilities, but the fact that humanity's default setting is aggressive friendship. We will pack bond with you whether you want us to or not. We can't help it. It's just who we are. The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Pip spoke up, their voice warm with what Davis suspected was their species' version of amusement. You know what, Captain Davis? I think I'm okay with that. The galaxy could use more aggressive friendship. Klepto sighed. But he was smiling. Motioned to establish full diplomatic relations with Earth, acknowledging that humans are insane but apparently in a mostly harmless way. All in favor? The vote was unanimous. Davis felt relief wash over her. Thank you, Council. I promise. The rest of our domesticated species are much less controversial. We have cats, which are basically small, fluffy— Captain, Klepto interrupted. Let's save that conversation for next month's session. I think we've all had enough revelations for one day. Fair enough. 3 months later, the galaxy had cautiously accepted that dogs were, in fact, not biological weapons but rather extremely good boys and girls who deserved all the treats and belly rubs. Klepto had acquired a therapy corgi named Admiral Stomps, who had the run of his embassy and ruled it with an iron paw wrapped in adorable fur. The ambassador claimed it was for stress relief. Everyone knew he was completely smitten with the little dog and had already commissioned 5 different portraits. Pip had started the galaxy's first interspecies dog park, which had become wildly popular despite initial concerns. It turned out that when you gave different species a common interest, like throwing balls for dogs to chase, they found it remarkably easy to get along. Various other council members had also acquired dogs, each claiming it was for diplomatic purposes or cultural research. The truth was simpler. They'd all fallen victim to puppy dog eyes and wagging tails. Humanity's most effective ambassadors weren't diplomats at all, they were dogs. Davis was feeling pretty good about all of it, right up until the celebration ceremony where she made one small, casual comment. "I'm so glad this all worked out," she said to Klepto, who was holding Admiral Stomps and refusing to admit that he was baby-talking to the corgi. "I was really worried about explaining dogs. I thought cats would be easier to introduce, honestly." Klepto stopped mid-baby talk. "Cats? Yeah, you know, small carnivores. Extremely flexible spines. Retractable claws. Exceptional night vision. They're great at hunting rodents and birds. Very independent. Most of them are only semi-domesticated, really. They chose to live with us. But they definitely keep us around on their terms, not ours." The color drained from Klepto's face. Well, his feathers paled, which Davis assumed was the same thing. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Klepto said slowly, his voice taking on that dangerously calm quality that Davis had learned to recognize as barely suppressed panic. "You have another species of Deathworld predator living in your homes?" "Well, yeah, cats. They're smaller than dogs, much more independent. Some people prefer them because smaller predators, independent operators, hunting specialists." Klepto's eye was twitching again. "Captain Davis, are you telling me that humans domesticated stealth killers? They're not stealth killers, they're just okay. They are kind of stealth killers. But in a cute way? In a cute way?" "They purr," Davis offered weakly. "What's a purr?" "It's this vibrating sound they make when they're happy. It's very soothing, scientifically proven to lower blood pressure." Klepto stared at her. Admiral Stomps, sensing tension, licked his hand reassuringly. "Captain Davis," Klepto said very, very carefully, "exactly how many species has humanity domesticated?" Davis did some mental math. "Depends on how you count it. I mean, there are dogs and cats and horses and cattle and pigs and chickens and rabbits and hamsters and guinea pigs and ferrets, and some people keep reptiles, and there's this whole thing with keeping fish in tanks and birds in cages, and—" "Stop." Davis stopped. Klepto took several deep breaths. Admiral Stomps licked his hand again. "Motion to call an emergency council session regarding Earth's complete catalog of domesticated species. All in favor?" Every council member present raised their appendages, tentacles, or equivalent voting mechanisms. Motion passed. Klepto looked at Davis with the expression of someone who had just realized they'd made a terrible mistake. "Captain Davis, you will prepare a comprehensive presentation on all domesticated Earth species. We will reconvene in 1 month." "Sure," Davis said. "No problem. Should I bring examples or—" "No. Right, no examples, got it. Mr. Waffles wagged his tail, blissfully unaware that he had opened a Pandora's box that would haunt Earth-galactic relations for years to come. Davis patted his head. "Good boy. Very good boy. You have no idea what you've started." Mr. Waffles licked her hand, which he felt was an appropriate response to everything, and somewhere in a small apartment on Earth, a cat knocked a glass off a counter just to watch it fall, completely unconcerned with galactic politics or humanity's diplomatic future. Because that's what cats do.